Love. It's one of the most powerful feelings in life, and therefore, one of the most popular subjects that artists like to explore in their work. So it's not surprising that love and relationships are a big part of comics. However, a lot of people argue that comics are a bit lacking in the romance department. Now, I'm not sure if that's a completely fair assessment. I would argue that romance is present in the majority of comics, in some shape or form. There's always some kind of pining for the girl next door, or flirting with members of your superhero team in most books. I will, however, admit that I've seen a couple of worrying things happen in comics that may support a similar theory. That theory being that comics hate relationships. I'm not sure why I said that so dramatically. It's probably the title of this video. Anyway, my point being, comics are full of people having feelings for each other, but I'm not sure there's much support for what comes after. So many relationships never happen or are just destroyed in comics. It's surprisingly rare to read about a couple in a comic book. Now, this may just be my delusion, but I ask you to indulge me for a couple of minutes as I give you some examples of the axing of what could have been some interesting relationships. Let's start with the most controversial, because this is a YouTube video. Batwoman Gate. Now, firstly, can we please come up with more creative names for scandals rather than just sticking the word gate on the end? Anyway, some people will know the character of Batwoman. For those who don't, Batwoman is a vigilante in Gotham who hasn't got much to do with the rest of the Bat family other than just being inspired by Batman to punch bad dudes at night. So, in 2013, J.H. Williams III was writing a comic which Batwoman, or Kate Kane, was engaged to marry her fiancée Maggie Sawyer. The book was a hit with readers, and people were enjoying the build to the next step of this relationship, when suddenly, the creative team just stepped down, refusing to write the book anymore. It turned out that DC had told them that Batwoman was not allowed to get married. At first, this sparked up many questions of possible homophobic motivations behind the decision, but DC released a statement saying that they would have stopped the marriage no matter who was getting married to who, because it didn't fit with the agenda of the Bat family characters. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that DC are telling the truth about it not being her sexuality that motivated this, even though I'm not sure that I believe it. This still makes very little sense. In a statement, a DC co-publisher said, if you look at every one of the characters in the Batman family, their personal lives kind of suck. It's a comic. It's fictional. Their lives don't need to suck because you made their lives up. Why is it such a bad thing for a character to be happy? Also, Batwoman is barely even in the Batman family. She clearly doesn't mean enough to them to get an invite to the creepy, faceless dinner parties the Joker holds for them. It's stupid, but it doesn't just happen at DC. Marvel have romantic blood on their hands too. Now, I recently talked about the Clone Saga on Comic Talk, so before I talk about this, I do want to apologize in advance for again reminding you of horrible moments in Spider-Man history. I'm gonna assume you all just said apology accepted. Anyway, One More Day. The less said about the plot of One More Day, the better. But what I want to talk about is Joe Quesada's plan going into the story. Quesada was the editor-in-chief in Marvel, and he planned for One More Day just so he could erase the marriage of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Not break them up, but make it so their entire marriage never even happened. And his excuse for this was that relationships in comics ultimately become stale and boring. And this brings us to my main problem. That excuse is used all the time, and I've never been convinced. Relationships are far more interesting than the build-up. Yes, the will they, won't they that we all experience before a relationship starts is fun, but the relationship itself is where things become so much more complicated and interesting. Anyone who's ever been in a serious relationship will tell you that it can be the most fun and most difficult thing ever. To me, there's little in life more interesting than finding out how two separate humans with their own baggage, opinions, and emotions come together and try to make it work. There's so much you could explore, DC and Marvel. There's loyalty, secrecy, compatibility, difference of opinions, how it affects friends, dates, marriage, sex. Don't even get me started on sex. I could write an 18-issue story arc just about the changes in Lois and Clark's sexual relationships over the years. Okay, that sounded really creepy, but my point still stands. People are complicated. If this weren't the case, we wouldn't write stories about them. So when you have two, or more, of these complicated people entering into a cohabitating state of cuddles and arguments, it gets even more complicated. Now, if you're as irrationally irked as I am about this, don't fear, because there is a solution. It's the fix for most problems in life, and that is indie comics. Want a story that explores sexual relationships in a fun but real way? Read Sex Criminals. Want a story that captures those perfectly small and hugely important moments when falling in love with someone? Read Soppy. And if you want a story that hits you in the gut about the inner thoughts of a person who feels empty without their partner, read Lost at Sea. No, but I'm being too harsh on mainstream comics. They do, of course, feature relationships, but too often are creators scared to dig into what would happen if the guy did get the girl, or the guy, or both. I'm Cameron Morris, and this was Comic Talk.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Check us out on Twitter, check out the store, and, get some merch. Get a nice little baseball cap. Play baseball? Like baseball? I like baseball. Thanks for watching.